Okay, welcome back to our homework for review. In this homework, you're introduced to if statements for the first time, at least in our homework exercises, and we've got some instructions here. Talks about how these are the most basic building blocks of decision making with computers, which is absolutely true. We've talked about this a lot in lecture. The basic structure of an if statement in Python is if condition do this. And here's an actual real example where we set a variable age to 18. And if age is greater than or equal to 18, we print out you can vote. Now I want to take a moment and talk about the structure of an if statement as we look at our first problem. Zoom this out. Okay, so our first if statement here says create an if statement using the variables below that will assign true to is hot if temp is greater than 80. Experiment by changing temp to different values, running the code, and typing is hot into the shell or use print statements, either one. You can use this method for each problem in the assignment. So we're going to use this method, meaning this experimentation, using print, shell, all that kind of stuff for each problem. But the first thing I want to point out, and I don't think I was very clear about this in lecture, is the purpose of, let's see, it's greater than 80. So if temp is greater than 80, right? What's the purpose of this colon that I've just put here? I'll ultra zoom into the colon, right? This guy right here. What's his job? Well, his job in Python is to basically say whatever follows on the next line of code or the next multiple lines of code, as long as it's tabbed in. As long as it's tabbed in by a few spaces here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Some people like to do 5 spaces, but most programmers, or not, I won't say most, but a lot of programmers just like to say tab, right? And so tab puts us in a new block of code, and this colon right here puts us in a new block of code. And what that means is that this code only runs if the if statement is true, right? That's the new block of code. And we're actually going to be using this idea of a block of code created by a colon in a lot of future programs. So it's important to understand that. And I'm sorry I've been a little negligent in talking about it. My hope was that you would pick it up in the book and those kind of things, but I know that always doesn't happen, or doesn't always happen. All right, so what's our goal here again? We're going to say if the temp is greater than 80, what are we going to do? We're going to assign true to is hot. Well, right now, is hot has false assigned to it. And we'll go ahead and say is hot is true, right, if temp is greater than 80. So once we've assigned true to is hot, we're essentially done with this problem. We've switched it from false to true if temp is greater than 80. Otherwise, we can type this in over here, is hot, we get true. Otherwise, we can change the temp, we could say 79. And now if we run this code again, we can say is hot, and it'll be false, right? Because it's not hitting our if statement. Okay, moving on. Create an if statement using the variables below that will assign true to can drive if age is greater than or equal to 16. All right, so if age is greater than or equal to 16, then we'll assign true to can drive. We'll run our code. We'll check can drive. Pretty straightforward. Can drive gets switched to true only when age is greater than or equal to 16. So if I change this to age of 10, I run it again and I say can drive, I get false. All right. Number 3. Create an if statement using the variables below that will assign false to senior discount if age is less than 65. So we're going to assign false to senior discount if age is less than 65. If age is less than 65, senior discount is false. Okay, so notice it starts out as true this time. When I run this code, what will senior discount be? Age is 64, so thinking about this logically, oops, we should see false, right? Because age is less than, in this case, age is less than 65, so senior discount gets set to false. If we adjust this to age 66, and we run it again, senior discount, true, right? Because 66 is greater than 65, it's not less than 65, so this code never gets changed. This code does not run unless we hit this if statement. All right, number 4, create an if statement using the variables below that will assign false to has name if name is equal to an empty string. So we're basically saying there is no name there if this is an empty string. Okay, so we've got this empty space, and it doesn't really matter if it's single quotes or double quotes here. So we'll say if name is equal to this, then we will say has name is false, because there is no name there, it's just an empty space. So now we'll check has name, and it's false. Notice I used different quotes here. And that's okay. These are the same thing. Really what Python is looking for is what is the data in between those quotes, whether they're double or single. And as long as it's just an empty space in both, then Python sees them as the same thing. Create an if statement using the variables below that will assign true to isEmpty if my list is an empty list. Pretty straightforward. So if my list equals an empty list, this guy right here, is empty equals false. Or excuse me, is empty equals true, because it is an empty list. Now we'll run this, and we'll say is empty true. Now there's another way to think about this. An empty list on its own is what we call falsy. We've talked about this before. So if we say empty list is equal to false over here, we're going to get that's false. So that's not actually true. An empty list is not the same thing as false. But if we were to say empty list equals 0, also false. If we say empty list equals true, we get false as well. So it's not true, it's not false, it's falsy. We call it falsy. And falsy values are things we can use in an if statement in this way. So what we can do with this is we can say something like, if my list, okay, then is empty will remain false. Otherwise, is empty is true. Now let's see what happens. We'll run the code and we'll say is empty, and I bet we'll get true. And we do. That's because if my list has anything in it, like a 1, 2, or 3, it becomes truthy. Okay, it has more of a true value to it, we would say. So now if I run this, I'm going to say is empty, and we're going to get false because I've put some stuff in my list. But as long as there is nothing in my list, then this if statement, this condition will never be true because the list is empty. And so that's going to end up with me having is empty be true. Create an if statement that will print the string I love pizza if loves pizza is equal to true. All right, so we'll say if loves pizza is equal to true, then we can print I love pizza. All right. There we go. We get I love pizza. Now, another thing you can do, oh, actually, I show you down here, so let's move on to 6a. So 6a is observe the output of the code below by running the program. Why do you think it works the way it does? So what happens here is that we set the Boolean value true. We set this variable, or assign true to this variable, loves pizza also. And then we say if loves pizza also. Well, just like our lights on example from lecture, loves pizza also is the same thing as true, right? It's just a label on this Boolean value true. And we can do this with all conditions. Anything that can evaluate to true, we can state it in this way. We can just say if this thing, which also represents true or false, print whatever, or do whatever, right? Do whatever code we want to execute right there, okay? So that works as well. It's just some shorthand. Now this one is create an if statement that will print the string time to stop eating if I'm full is equal to true. What happens when the variable is false, as it is right now? So let's say if I'm full, print time to stop eating. And that's working just like this one up here. So if I run this code, I'm full is not true, right? I'm going to say time to stop eating. Otherwise, if I say true here, and we're just focusing on this one right now, it'll say time to stop eating. So let me, let's see. Let me comment these two out real quick so you can just see clearly what's happening here. All right, if we run this again, we get I love pizza, that comes from up here. But time to stop eating, that's coming from this one on line 70 through 72. And we get time to stop eating because we've said I'm full is true, but if we set it back to false, we get I love pizza, right? And so, you know, the opposite of that could be, you know, I'll keep eating, which is basically what we're doing down here. And that's this one down here, 80 to 82, is an example of where we're using not, which is a little bit ahead of where this assignment is in the sequence of your assignments, right? So we're kind of we're advancing forward to think about what does not actually do here. So that's it. That's 4.2 for your homework, and I'll see you in the next video.